Maya Patel stood before the Interstellar Military Academy's admission board, her heart thundering against her ribs as 6 pairs of alien eyes studied her with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. The Draconids, with their iridescent scales and neural-enhanced brains, exchanged glances that needed no translation. The floating Aetherian counselor, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline shell, dimmed noticeably, their species equivalent of a disappointed sigh. Candidate Patel. Administrator Vexthor spoke, his metallic exoskeleton gleaming under the chamber's harsh lights. Your test scores are peculiar. His secondary arms twitched, a gesture Maya had learned indicated extreme discomfort among his kind. While you've somehow managed to meet our minimum requirements, your physical capabilities are barely above what we'd expect from a maintenance drone. Maya remained still, her face neutral despite the familiar sting of the words. She'd heard variations of this assessment throughout her life. Too small, too weak, too human. But beneath her calm exterior, her mind was already cataloging every detail of the room. The slight delay in the universal translator's neural feed, the way the Draconid scales shifted color with their emotions, the barely perceptible force field that separated the board members from candidates. However, Vexthor continued, the Galactic Council's diversity mandates require us to accept a certain number of developing species. The way he said developing made it sound like a terminal illness. You will be assigned to Squad Delta 7, under Commander Lyra. I suggest you use your time here to understand why your species remains so far behind in the evolutionary race. Maya's acceptance into the academy wasn't met with the traditional horn blast that welcomed other cadets. Instead, she received a muted administrative tone, the sound reserved for routine maintenance notifications. As she walked through the academy's sprawling crystal and metal halls toward her assigned quarters, the other species gave her a wide berth, as if evolutionary inferiority might be contagious. Her assigned squad was no different. The Draconid twins, Zar and Zix, nearly tripped over their own tails trying to distance themselves from her during their first formation. The Aetherian Cadet, who called themselves Lumina, actually flickered out of the visible spectrum when Maya approached, though whether from disgust or embarrassment wasn't clear. Only Commander Lyra, a towering sentinel with 4 arms and skin that seemed to absorb light, treated Maya with something approaching professional courtesy. Cadet Patel. She addressed Maya during their first squad briefing. You will find our training regimen challenging. The Academy hasn't adjusted its standards since the Great Convergence, 3,000 years ago. I understand, Commander, Maya replied, noting how the commander's upper right hand continuously tapped a specific rhythm against her armor. A subtle sign of stress she filed away for future reference. The first month proved brutal. While other cadets generated personal force fields with a thought, Maya had to rely on physical barriers during combat training. When they interfaced directly with the Academy's quantum computers, she laboriously typed on a holographic keyboard. During tactical exercises, she watched her squad mates process battle scenarios in milliseconds while she carefully drew out each scenario on her datapad. But Maya wasn't just surviving. She was learning. Every failure, every humiliation, every shocked look when she walked away from a training accident that should have killed her, taught her something new. She learned that Draconid neural enhancements had a 3-second reset period after processing complex data. She discovered that Aetherians became briefly solid when startled. She noticed how the Sentinel's perfect coordination broke down when faced with asymmetrical threats. The breaking point came during their first major combat simulation. Squad Delta 7 was tasked with defending a quantum reactor core from an elite strike team. The scenario was designed to test advanced shield harmonics and energy weapon synchronization, technologies that Maya couldn't even begin to access. As her squad mates took up their traditional defensive positions, Maya did something that made Commander Lyra's skin actually absorb all visible light in shock. She asked to be the maintenance worker. The what? Zar sneered, his scales flickering between confusion and amusement. Every reactor has maintenance staff, Maya explained. keeping her voice steady. "They're part of the simulation's background NPCs. I'd like to play that role." The request was so bizarre, so beneath contempt, that they actually allowed it. While her squad mates prepared their advanced combat suites, Maya familiarized herself with the reactor's maintenance protocols, waste disposal systems, and emergency procedures. When the attack came, it was exactly as overwhelming as designed. The elite strike team breached the outer defenses with textbook precision. Zar and Zix's synchronized neural net targeting systems were overwhelmed. Lumina's energy form was disrupted by specialized frequency weapons. Even Commander Lyra's centuries of tactical experience couldn't find a solution. They never saw Maya coming. While the attackers focused on the real threats, she moved through maintenance tunnels, adjusting coolant flows here, modifying pressure gauges there. By the time anyone realized what was happening, half the attack force was trapped in sections with disabled artificial gravity, and the other half was dealing with environmental systems that randomly switched between freezing and boiling. The simulation ended with the attackers in complete disarray, their perfect formations broken by something as simple as a maintenance worker who understood that even the most advanced warrior needed air to breathe and gravity to fight. The silence that followed was deafening. Commander Lyra's skin slowly returned to its normal light-absorbing state as she reviewed the combat logs. The Draconid twin scales had shifted to a color that wasn't even in their usual emotional spectrum. Lumina had become so bright with agitation that the room's automatic filters had to activate. "This," Commander Lyra finally spoke, her four hands completely still for the first time Maya had seen, "is not how the scenario was meant to be solved." "No, Commander," Maya agreed, still holding her maintenance worker's datapad. "It's how it needed to be solved." That evening, as Maya sat alone in her quarters reviewing the day's events, her datapad chimed with an unexpected notification. 3 cadets from other squads, species traditionally considered even less advanced than humans, had requested to study with her. They too had seen beyond the traditional methods of the Academy, but never dared to challenge them. Maya smiled as she accepted their requests. The Academy wanted warriors who could generate force fields and synchronize energy weapons. What they were about to get was something far more dangerous, a human who understood that the greatest weapon wasn't evolutionary superiority, but the ability to see what everyone else overlooked. Breaking protocol. Word spread through the interstellar military academy's crystalline halls like a quantum wave collapse. The human had formed a study group. Not just any study group, but one comprising the Academy's most overlooked species. Along with Maya Patel sat Corel, an amphibious mergen whose species was considered too primitive to even generate basic bioelectric fields. Anx 427, a silicon-based lithoid whose crystalline thought processes were deemed too rigid for advanced tactical thinking. And Thorn, a photosynthetic Florian whose entire species had been written off as walking vegetation. The Academy's elite viewed this gathering of evolutionary misfits with a mixture of amusement and second-hand embarrassment. That is, until the group's first tactical exercise. The scenario seemed simple enough. Neutralize an orbital defense platform that had fallen under enemy control. The solution, according to 10,000 years of established military doctrine, involved complex shield harmonics, synchronized energy weapon strikes, and precisely calculated approach vectors. Maya's group didn't even try to approach the platform. "Explain your solution again, Cadet Patel," demanded General Axthor, his crystalline form vibrating with barely contained frustration as he reviewed their simulation logs. "And this time, try to help me understand how this could possibly be considered a military strategy." "We noticed that the platform's hydroponics bay required regular supply shipments of fertilizer," Maya explained, while her teammates stood proudly beside her. Corel analyzed the chemical composition and realized we could modify it to emit a frequency that would interfere with the platform's sensor arrays. The Mersian cadets' gills fluttered with barely contained excitement as they added, "The altered fertilizer was completely safe for the plants. It just happened to create a sensor blind spot large enough for Thorn to exploit. The Florians' leaves rustled in what their species considered a smile. The enemy never considered that one of the decorative plants in their command center might be consciously spreading spores that would gradually degrade their neural interfaces, a fact that X427 helped us calculate perfectly, Maya finished, nodding to the lithoid, whose crystalline surface sparkled with pride. General Axthor's own crystalline form clouded with confusion. But the scenario was designed to test advanced combat techniques, shield harmonics, weapon synchronization, not gardening. With respect, General, Maya replied, maintaining perfect military posture. The scenario was designed to test our ability to neutralize the platform. The method wasn't specified. The incident might have been dismissed as a fluke, except it kept happening. In urban combat simulations, Maya's group utilized public transportation systems to outmaneuver enemy forces. During space combat exercises, they achieved victory by manipulating garbage disposal trajectories to create debris fields that disrupted enemy formations. They turned climate control systems into weapons, maintenance schedules into tactical advantages, and once memorably used a station's automated cleaning robots to deliver a computer virus. The Academy's traditional elite students were outraged. Zalvis, a Draconid prodigy whose neural enhancements could process 1 million tactical scenarios per second, filed a formal complaint arguing that such solutions violated the spirit of military combat. These tactics show a complete disregard for the honored traditions of warfare. Zalvis declared during a disciplinary hearing, their scales shifting to the deep purple of righteous indignation. They transformed sacred combat into maintenance work. Commander Lyra, who had been quietly observing Maya's progress, finally spoke up. Cadet Zalvis, can you identify any strategic flaws in Cadet Patel's solutions? Any instances where her methods failed to achieve the mission objectives? The Draconid scales rippled with frustration. The objectives were achieved through irregularities, anomalies. They were effective. Lyra finished, her light-absorbing skin seeming to deepen. And warfare, Cadet, is not about honor. It's about achieving objectives. The hearing concluded without any formal reprimand, but it marked a turning point. Other cadets, even those from traditionally superior species, began to quietly approach Maya's group. Not to join them. That would be too much of a social sacrifice, but to learn. I don't understand. A quantum collective consciousness asked Maya during one such secret meeting, its energy form flickering with curiosity. Your species can't even naturally interface with basic technology. How do you conceive these solutions? Maya smiled, remembering her first days at the Academy. Because we can't interface naturally, we have to understand how things actually work. When you can't rely on technological superiority, you learn to see the connections that others miss. Her study group's influence spread further when they introduced what Maya called cross-training. Corel taught others about chemical compositions and reactions that most species ignored in favor of energy manipulation. X427 shared insights about structural weaknesses that only a silicon-based life form would notice. Thorn demonstrated how biological systems could be subtly influenced over time. Each member brought perspectives that the Academy's traditional training had never considered valuable. The breaking point came during the Academy's most prestigious event, the Strategic Response Championship. Teams from every division competed in increasingly complex combat scenarios, showcasing the most advanced military techniques in the galaxy. Maya's group wasn't even supposed to qualify. But they did. And as they prepared to face the defending champions, a team of Draconid neural-enhanced elites, in the final round, Maya gathered her unlikely allies. They expect us to try to beat them at their own game, she told them, her eyes gleaming with that now familiar look that meant she saw something others had missed. So let's play a different one entirely. As the championship scenario began, no one realized that the real victory wouldn't be won through force fields or energy weapons. It would come from 4 beings that the galaxy had dismissed as evolutionary dead ends, who had learned that being underestimated was perhaps the greatest tactical advantage of all. The championship gambit. The Academy's grand arena hummed with the energy of 10,000 advanced beings. Quantum consciousness swirled in their designated observation spheres, while crystalline entities refracted light in patterns of anticipation. The defending champions, Team Apex, stood resplendent in their neural-enhanced battle suits, their draconid scales gleaming with confidence. In contrast, Maya's team looked almost painfully ordinary in their standard-issue uniforms. "The championship scenario will begin in 30 seconds, announced the arena's AI, its voice resonating through both physical and psychic channels. This year's challenge: defend the Nexus Core installation from an overwhelming assault force while maintaining critical systems functionality. Maya caught the slight twitch in Commander Lyra's upper right hand from where she sat in the instructor's observation pod. The commander knew something others didn't. This scenario was no mere simulation. The Nexus Core was a real installation, and this game was actually testing response strategies for a potential future crisis. 10 seconds, the AI continued. Teams, prepare for neural synchronization. Team Apex's members connected to their neural interfaces with practiced ease. Their consciousness merged into a single tactical entity, able to process combat data at unimaginable speeds. They didn't even bother looking at Maya's team. After all, how could beings who couldn't even achieve basic neural synchronization hope to compete? Begin. The scenario materialized around them. The Nexus Core rose like a technological mountain, its quantum processors handling data crucial to the stability of several galactic sectors. The attacking force appeared at the edge of the simulation, a swarm of autonomous combat units backed by heavy assault carriers. Team Apex moved with perfect coordination, their neural-linked minds deploying defensive screens and weapons platforms with millisecond precision. It was beautiful, flawless, and exactly what the enemy expected. Maya's team didn't move to the defensive positions at all. Instead, Corell dove into the installation's water recycling system, while Thorn walked calmly into the Core's botanical gardens. X-427 interfaced with a maintenance terminal, their crystalline form resonating with the station's basic systems. Maya herself headed to the visitor center. The arena erupted in confused murmurs. Even the attacking force's AI seemed momentarily puzzled by the unorthodox deployment. "They've conceded already," Xalvis, Team Apex's leader, broadcasted on an open channel. "Probably for the best. Now they won't have to." The attack began, cutting off his words. The swarm hit Team Apex's defenses like a tsunami of advanced technology. Shield harmonics flared as energy weapons carved paths through space. It was chaos theory in action, a perfect storm of military might. But something was wrong. The autonomous units at the front of the swarm began behaving erratically. Some fired at their own allies, others spun in useless circles. Team Apex's neural link registered confusion. The enemy's command protocols were degrading, but how? "Did you know?" Maya's voice came across the tactical channel, calm as ever, "that the Nexus Core's visitor center has to process millions of tourist queries every day. Its public information systems are actually more sophisticated than its military firewalls. Funny what you learn working as a tour guide." Before Team Apex could process this information, their own defensive systems began to fail. Not from enemy fire, but from within. The cleaning protocols in the water recycling system are fascinating, Corell added, their amphibian voice bubbling with amusement. They're designed to eliminate any foreign substances, including, apparently, the quantum-stabilized coolant used in advanced shield generators. The botanical gardens, previously dismissed as decorative, suddenly released clouds of spores that played havoc with optical targeting systems. X-427's presence in the maintenance systems had rerouted power in ways that even the station's builders hadn't thought possible. Team Apex's perfect formation began to crumble. Their neural synchronization, overwhelmed by cascading system failures, started to break down. The attacking force, though equally confused, pressed their advantage. Fall back to secondary positions. Zalvis ordered, their scales now a sickly shade of panic. Recalibrate shields tow. I'm afraid the secondary positions are currently experiencing some environmental issues. Maya interrupted. Nothing dangerous, just a combination of artificial gravity fluctuations, atmosphere pressure irregularities, and what the maintenance logs will probably call unexplained sewage backup. The simulation ended not with the expected clash of advanced technology, but with both Team Apex and the attacking force effectively neutralized by what appeared to be a series of unfortunate system malfunctions. The arena fell silent as the results appeared on the quantum displays. Victory. Team adaptability. This isn't combat. Zalvis protested, their neural links still smoking slightly. They didn't even fight. No, Commander Lyra spoke, standing up in the instructor's pod. They won. There's a difference. The silence in the arena was broken by a sound that had never been heard before in a championship final. Laughter. Not from the elite species, but from the maintenance workers, the service staff, the background personnel that kept the academy running. They had just witnessed something revolutionary. Victory achieved not through evolutionary superiority, but through understanding the systems that everyone else took for granted. As Maya's team stood for the victory ceremony, she noticed something interesting. The arena's quantum displays, the neural interfaces, even the advanced environmental controls, none of them were working quite right, almost as if someone had introduced a few small changes into their basic operating protocols. She caught Commander Lyra's eye and saw the slight nod of understanding. The real victory wasn't just winning the championship. It was proving that the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy wasn't advanced technology or evolutionary advantages. It was the ability to understand how things really worked and the creativity to use that knowledge in ways no one expected. The academy would never be the same. And somewhere in the service corridors, in the maintenance shafts, in all the places the elite species never bothered to look, a revolution was beginning. Systems failure. The Academy's response to the championship upset was swift and predictable. They changed the rules. New regulations appeared overnight, strictly defining what constituted acceptable tactical approaches. Maintenance systems were declared off-limits. Environmental controls were designated as protected infrastructure. Even the botanical gardens were placed under high-level security protocols. Maya found the whole thing darkly amusing. They're so focused on preventing what we did, she told her team during one of their now infamous study sessions, that they've forgotten to ask why it worked. But they weren't the only ones asking that question. In the weeks following the championship, strange things began happening throughout the academy. The neural-enhanced combat training systems would mysteriously reset to beginner levels. Quantum computational arrays would inexplicably default to basic computing modes. Even the advanced AI teaching assistants seemed to be operating with reduced capabilities. The Academy's elite students were furious. Without their technological advantages, they were forced to learn things the old-fashioned way, through observation, practice, and actual understanding. This is sabotage. Zalvis declared during an emergency student council meeting, their scales practically strobing with rage. Ever since that championship disaster, everything has been falling apart, and I think we all know who's responsible. But for once, Maya and her team weren't behind the problems. They exchanged worried glances as reports came in of similar issues at other military installations across the galaxy. Someone had taken their championship tactics and turned them into a template for systematic technological disruption. Commander Lyra called Maya to her office as the crisis deepened. The commander's skin had darkened to an almost complete absence of light, a sign of extreme concern among her species. The Academy Council has received intelligence, Lyra began, her four hands perfectly still. That suggests these system failures are not random. They appear to be precursors to an attack. Someone is systematically dismantling our technological advantages, using methods remarkably similar to your championship strategy. But we didn't share those methods with anyone. Maya protested. We just showed the galaxy that its most advanced systems could be defeated by understanding basic infrastructure. Lyra finished. The Council believes the enemy studied your victory and improved upon it. They're not just disrupting individual systems, they're creating cascading failures that spread through quantum-entangled networks. Maya felt a chill as she realized the implications. They're turning our own technological evolution against us. The situation reached critical mass 3 days later. In the middle of routine training exercises, every advanced system in the Academy simultaneously failed. Neural interfaces went dark. Quantum computers reverted to binary processing. Even basic energy fields flickered and died. Panic erupted as the elite species found themselves cut off from the technology they depended on. Triconid cadets struggled to process information without their neural enhancements. Quantum consciousness beings found themselves confined to basic physical forms. The most advanced military training facility in the galaxy had been reduced to its most basic functions. Then the attack came. The enemy revealed themselves as the regression, a splinter faction dedicated to forcing the galaxy back to a simpler time, before advanced technology. They had watched Maya's championship victory and seen not innovation, but validation of their ideology. If primitive systems could defeat advanced technology, then advanced technology was clearly a weakness. As the regression forces approached the Academy, the regular defense forces found themselves helpless. Their advanced weapon systems were useless. Their tactical networks were down. Even their basic communications were limited to old-fashioned radio waves. In the chaos, Maya and her team remained surprisingly calm. They had never relied on advanced technology in the first place. While others panicked, they began to move with practiced precision. "Corel, what's the status of the water recycling system?" Maya asked, falling into the familiar pattern of their championship strategy. The Mersians' gills fluttered as they accessed a basic mechanical gauge. Still operational. They only disabled the quantum purification arrays. The basic filtration systems are working fine. NX 427. Can you access maintenance power routing? The lithoid's crystalline surface sparkled. Advanced grid is down, but the emergency systems are independent. Basic power distribution is still possible. Thorn. The Florian's leaves rustled with determination. The gardens are unaffected. They didn't bother to disable purely biological systems. Maya nodded, a plan already forming. The regression had studied their championship victory, but they had missed the most important lesson. It wasn't about using primitive systems to defeat advanced ones. It was about understanding that every system, no matter how advanced, relied on basic principles. They think they shifted the playing field in their favor, Maya told her team, that familiar, thoughtful expression on her face. But they've actually given us exactly what we need. A galaxy that has to work with basic systems. And who knows basic systems better than us? As the regression forces approached, confident in their victory over advanced technology, they didn't realize they were about to face something far more dangerous than quantum computers or neural networks. They were about to face a team that had turned being underestimated into an art form. The Academy's elite students watched in stunned silence as Maya's team began to move. They weren't just going to defend the Academy. They were going to teach the galaxy a lesson about the difference between defeating technology and truly understanding how things worked. Evolution's true path. The regression forces advanced on the Academy with absolute confidence. Their ships, stripped down to basic propulsion and manual weapons, represented what they saw as technological purity. They had disabled the Academy's quantum defenses, neural networks, and advanced AI systems. In their minds, they had already won. They didn't expect to be defeated by plumbing. Redirecting emergency water reserves now, Corel announced from their position in the maintenance hub. The Mersians' webbed hands flew across manual valve controls, their natural understanding of fluid dynamics turning the Academy's water system into a weapon. Massive jets of high-pressure water erupted from maintenance ports around the Academy's perimeter, creating an unpredictable barrier that played havoc with the regression ship's simplified navigation systems. Without advanced stabilizers, several smaller craft spun out of control, their pilots unable to compensate for the sudden turbulence. Botanical countermeasures deployed, Thorne reported, their leaves quivering with excitement. The Florian had spent months cultivating specific plant species in the Academy gardens, species chosen not for their beauty, but for their practical applications. Now clouds of naturally produced spores filled the air, clogging engines and obscuring visibility. Anx 427's crystalline surface pulsed with activity as they coordinated from the emergency power station, redirecting basic power flows to Section Gamma 7. Overloading non-essential systems in 3, 2, 1. Across the Academy grounds, simple electrical systems surged and sparked, creating electromagnetic pulses that didn't need advanced technology to disrupt the enemy's communications. The regression forces had stripped their ships of advanced shielding, making them vulnerable to even these basic electrical disruptions. Maya coordinated it all from a makeshift command center in the Academy's old mechanical backup facility, a room that most students didn't even know existed. Around her, the Academy's elite students watched in fascination as she directed her team using nothing more complex than hand signals and radio calls. "I don't understand," Zalvis said, their scales shifting to a color that indicated deep confusion. "How are you doing this without neural links? Without quantum targeting? Without depending on technology we don't fully understand?" Maya finished for them. "That's what the regression got wrong about our championship victory. We didn't win because we used primitive systems to beat advanced ones. We won because we understood how systems work at every level." As if to emphasize her point, another wave of regression ships fell into disarray as they encountered what appeared to be a simple debris field. But Maya's team had calculated each piece's trajectory perfectly, using basic physics to create a chaotic pattern that no manual pilot could safely navigate. The tide began to turn. The regression forces, so certain in their ideology of technological regression, found themselves outmaneuvered by opponents who understood both advanced and basic principles. Their attempts to disable complex systems had only given Maya's team more weapons to use against them. Commander Lyra watched from the backup facility, her skin gradually lightening as understanding dawned. "This is why the Council's simulation was wrong," she said quietly. "They assumed that losing advanced technology would make us vulnerable. They never considered that true evolution isn't about the technology you have. It's about understanding how things work." The battle reached its climax when the regression launched their final assault on the Academy's main plaza. They had expected to find chaos and surrender. Instead, they found Maya's team had turned the entire Academy into an integrated defense system, using nothing more complex than basic mechanics, chemistry, and physics. The plaza's decorative fountains became high-pressure deterrents. The ventilation system distributed Thorne's organic compounds with mathematical precision. Even the basic lighting systems had been modified to create disorienting patterns based on fundamental neurological responses common to all species. As the last regression ships retreated or surrendered, Maya gathered the Academy's students, elite and underestimated alike, in the main hall. The advanced systems were still offline, forcing everyone to listen without neural enhancements or quantum translators. "The regression thought they could force us back to a simpler time," she began, her voice carrying through the natural acoustics of the hall. "But they fundamentally misunderstood what makes technology valuable. It's not about having the most advanced systems, it's about understanding how systems work, from the most basic to the most complex." She gestured to her team. The amphibian who understood fluid dynamics as naturally as breathing. The silicon-based life form who could read power flows like poetry. The photosynthetic being who knew the practical applications of every plant in the galaxy. Each of them represented not a failure of evolution, but a different way of understanding the universe. True evolution, Maya continued, isn't about leaving basic systems behind. It's about building upon them. Each of you has amazing capabilities that your species developed over millions of years. But today showed us that those capabilities are most powerful when combined with fundamental understanding. The Academy changed after that day. Advanced technology returned, but it was no longer seen as the only path to victory. Training programs began incorporating understanding of basic systems alongside neural combat techniques. Maintenance protocols became as important as quantum algorithms. Species once dismissed as evolutionary dead ends were recognized for their unique perspectives and natural understanding of fundamental principles. And in the Academy's records, a new doctrine was added, the Patel principle. Victory belongs not to those with the most advanced technology, but to those who best understand how their tools actually work. Maya's team became legends, not for their championship victory, or even for defeating the regression, but for teaching the galaxy that true evolution means understanding where you came from as much as where you're going. In the end, they proved that the greatest evolutionary advantage isn't the ability to create advanced technology. It's the wisdom to understand how everything works together, from the simplest valve to the most complex quantum computer. The galaxy had learned its lesson. The next time someone tried to disable their advanced technology, they wouldn't panic. They would smile, remember the day a human and her team of evolutionary dead ends saved the Academy, and show the universe that true power comes from understanding, not just advancement. Last edited 2 minutes ago.